Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating, from the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day. Each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. My God, we're going to have a fun show. We have some very good friends of Just Energy Radio coming back on, making repeat performances, repeat appearances. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking to a good friend, Marie Jones, about, well, we're going to be talking about time travel, but I've named the show, this show is from the future, so maybe you actually are hearing it because we talked about it in the past or in the future. I don't know. We're going to find out all about time and how that affects us. And what's interesting is in the second hour, we're going to be talking to Cynthia Sue Larson about consciousness change, when consciousness changes the world, but really what we're going to be talking about is reality shifts. Not quite sure what that's all about, but I guess we're both going to find out in the second hour. But don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by SoulHealer.com. That's where you can find out about all the services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, clairvoyant readings, and energy healing. It's also loaded with articles and books and products and lots of stuff to read and check out. So please do go there and see all the things that I have to offer. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you can learn to become a medical intuitive practitioner yourself. And then coming up, and I know this is a little early, but some of the things I'm going to be talking to you about are really big events. In September, there's going to be a big fundraiser in Waxahachie, Texas. It's the paranormal community has really been getting into the support area, and so there's Paranormal Kicks Cancer event that's happening on September 15th. October 6th and 7th is the Central Texas Paracon, a very fun event, great speakers at that event in Austin, Texas. That's Central Texas Paracon. And then the big event, the one I've been talking about for weeks, is the Paradigm Symposium in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's October 18th to 21st. If you haven't heard me talk about it before, if you are a fan of the Ancient Alien shows, like all of those people are going to be there. So Eric Von Donigan, Giorgio Tsoukalos, you know, the guy with the hair, Bill Burns, all kinds of people, and a lot of good friends of Just Energy Radio, including our first hour guest, Marie Jones, and we'll talk to her a little bit about that, but also Nick Redfern, you know, who has the cot here at the show, Larry Flaxman, and some other people that have been on the show that they're just not coming to the top of my head. Scott Roberts, Micah Hanks, they've been on the show, good friends. Anyway, that's October 18th through 21st. It's going to be a great event. Get your tickets now because I hear they are going fast. And then my favorite event to do, November 3rd, is the History Haunts and Legends Conference in spooky Jefferson, Texas. And I'm sure everyone's heard me talking about how spooky Jefferson is. It's a fun event. It is jam-packed with lectures and a ghost walk and ghost hunting. It is a fun-filled day of spooky. Anyway, that's in Jefferson, Texas. So let me tell you a little bit about Marie, and we'll get her on the air to talk about her new book. This book is from the future. Marie Jones is a best-selling author, screenwriter, researcher, radio show host, and public speaker. Marie is highly regarded and popular speaker on science, metaphysics, consciousness, and the paranormal, and has appeared at major conferences and events. She has also lectured to local and regional meetup groups, networking organizations, and libraries, bookstores, and author events. So please welcome the author of the new book. This book is from the future, my good friend, Marie Jones. Hey, Marie, how are you?
I am fine. How are you?
I am great. I always love having you on the show.
Yes, we have great conversations.
And you're going to be at the Paradigm Symposium, and I'm going to be there, so I think we're actually going to get to, meet.
Yeah, yeah, we need more women there. I mean, really, it's like all these guys and too much testosterone. That should be really fun.
I'm not on the speaking ticket, which there have been some backroom conversations that have happened around that. But, if you guys want me on the speaking ticket, send an email to Paradigm Symposium saying, why isn't Dr. Rita speaking?
We need more female blood. Yeah, but it's a really intriguing lineup. The topics and subject matter, the whole ancient alien thing is just really gone so re-popular, I guess I should say. So it'll be fun.
It's going to be fun. What are you going to be speaking about at that event?
You know what? I think Larry and I are going to do a talk together on the grid, which is the concept that we are developing now. And it basically is a culmination of all the work that we've been doing, where we really sort of take a look at the infrastructure of reality. And I heard you say your next guest is going to be talking about other realities, and that's part of the grid as well. It's like a grid has so many different levels, and so reality has all these different levels. And what is going on environmentally and physiologically to us that allows us to experience these other levels of the grid. So I think that's what we're going to do, is sort of do a tandem kind of tag team talk on that.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And then I'll get to see you speak. I mean, I've seen Larry speak because he lives in Arkansas, and so he also attends the History Haunts and Legends Conference in Spooky Jefferson.
You guys are regulars.
Well, we both are. We're fixtures.
Yeah. I would love to come out for one of those. I'm going to have to try to get out. Those sound like so much fun.
They are so much fun because, there's the conference part, but then there's the ghost walk, and they do multiple investigations.
Yeah,
or if you're like my husband and I, there's this really fun little bar that has these great bands that come in, and we go and listen to music and dance and have fun. And because it's just such a relaxing little town that
it's not like a
it has ghosts.
Yeah. Yeah, so many of the conferences are in these big bustling cities, and you're getting from the airport to the hotel, and that sounds
and you get to see the inside of the hotel.
Yeah, really. Yeah, your room and the conference center. That's it, kids.
Yeah, and the closest restaurant.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so your new book is based on time and time travel research. So based on your research, I mean, there are so many people that talk about time, and is time even real, or is time just something that we perceive? So based on your research, does time even exist?
It does to us as human beings. It exists to us in a linear fashion because our brains are built, I guess you could say, we're physiologically built to perceive time in a linear fashion, the arrow of time, which moves from the past to the future, which helps us give order to the events and experiences in our lives. And if you think about it, if we couldn't do that, we would be living everything all at once, and it would just be utter chaos. There would really be no way for us to function. So I really think that time kind of came about as a functional survival tool for human beings. But, on the quantum level and on the cosmic level, that perception of time doesn't exist. It's really something that we have in order to give an order to our lives.
I can't even imagine, because there are people that say that everything happens all at the same time, and I can't imagine having my whole life, one, happen all at the same time, but then having our past, like not our past, but the past happening at the same time. I just think of, like Jesse James riding out in the prairies could be happening. It would be happening if all time happened at the same time.
Right.
At the same time. I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling.
And I honestly think we would go insane. I mean, I honestly think it's like, why are we not meant to always experience other levels of reality or see ghosts and, consistently experience the paranormal? Because I really think if we didn't have this arrow of time, if we didn't have this order of events, we'd go nuts. I mean, how would you live a life, a normal life, if everything were happening at once? And I think the brain serves as some kind of a filter where it can look at events and say, okay, well, this is important to me, I'm going to put this here, and this is important to me, so I'm going to put this here, and all that other stuff isn't important. So it really kind of shows how we are built functionally, really for survival, and yet there is all this other stuff going on out there that every now and then we sort of tap into.
But it seems like if time all happened at once, then we wouldn't really experience anything because it could happen in the blink of an eye. Everything.
Right. Yeah, it'd just be like one big blur. One big messy blur. So
and then how would I get to relish that hot fudge sundae that I just ate last night?
Yeah, think about your brain overloading from too much information. You wouldn't enjoy anything. I think a lot of times people will say things like, well, yeah, if we could eliminate or speed through the sad parts of our lives or the depressing parts, but really, if you don't experience those, how do you know something is joyful and happy? You have to have that contrast. So, again, and we have to wonder, animals, do they perceive time the same way we do? Are they sort of more easygoing and moving at a slower rate? And because that we can perceive time quicker or slower depending on what's going on. If we're in the middle of a car accident, everything suddenly slows down. It's almost like slow motion. And then you hear people say, they were having such a great time. The whole night went by in a flash. So really our perception does shift now and then.
My observation of animals, at least domestic animals, is they have watches.
Yeah.
Invisible
they know
watches.
Time to feed me.
It's like, our mind, 4 o'clock, it's like tap, 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 tap. Time to go do that little scroll. I can't say that word out too loud because she's just right there.
Oh, yeah. Can opener or whatever, the bag of food comes out, and they do. They get on their schedule, they get in their habit. But then, think of the way cats just sort of lie around all the time, and yet they don't seem really bored. So I don't know. Maybe they're processing time in a whole different way.
Yeah. One of the things that I was wondering is, why is there such confusion about time? It seems like there are so many different theories out there about what time is and how it works, and it doesn't seem like anybody really has a handle on what's going on.
Exactly.
Oh, you've noticed that too.
I noticed that, yeah. Well, I think obviously we're focused on the more obvious aspects of time, which is what we can see. We see that the little hands on the clock are ticking, and we see that, this TV show comes on before this one does, and that's all the stuff that is very much in our faces. It's very direct. We can see it. But again, when you realize that beyond the scope of human beings, down at the quantum level, particles behave in a whole different frame of time. There really isn't time. It all exists at once in the quantum level. Cosmically, out in the far reaches of the universe, there may be no time. We don't really know. And how intricately time is interwoven with space. So I think it's a discovery that we're on just as we're trying to conquer the laws of physics and the theory of everything and figuring out what the heck is out there at the end of the universe, or does it end at all? And time is a part of that. What we understand is the most basic thing, and that is that we use time so we can have functional lives. I think beyond that, no, it's a wide open field of inquiry.
Well, and I think if
it's not something you could really look at. It's not something you can hold in your hands. It's something that you perceive.
Well, but we can measure it.
We can. We measure it with our brains and our bodies. But again, out in that field, the field where everything is going on all at once, there's no measurement. So it's kind of like, okay, why is it different at the human level? And again, I think it's all functionality. I think it's evolution and survival, and part of being a human being is that we have to have some kind of order to our lives. Otherwise, what's the point?
Or you could flip it 180 degrees around and say, well, we order our life because we have time to utilize in how we interact in the world. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I mean, it very well could be that it is as cut and dry as that, because, we all were born, we live, we get older, we all die. So when we just look at it that simply, it looks like there is this arrow of time, and it's the same for everybody and everything. But we don't know what happens after death, all the paranormal theories and arguments that goes on. So if we were to ever really find that out for sure, I'm absolutely certain that our ideas about time would completely change, because then death is not the end of the human's time on, to be alive. I don't know about eternity, but there is something beyond that where we're taking time to a different level. Do ghosts perceive time differently in that other reality? If there are things like parallel universes, is time perceived the same way, or does it behave the same way on some of these other universes? So I think what we're stuck with is the perceptions that make sense to us here on Earth as human beings.
Oh, I just got like the funny factor going on. It's like these things that go through my head. I'm thinking, well, if it's a really boring alternative universe, I'll bet time goes a lot slower. Yeah, I don't want to go.
Right. Yeah. Well, and one of the research things that we read and included in the book was kind of fascinating about how, because I always kind of thought that if you're bored and not doing anything and you're just sort of goofing around, that time would go by faster. But it doesn't. Time goes by faster when you're really engaged in something. And at the same time, like when I'm writing, when I'm really engaged in my writing, it feels like time has slowed down to me. But then when I look up at the clock, 5 hours have passed. So there's this weird thing about focus and doing something that you're really intently focused and your mind is really directed towards, where you think it's going by really slow, and then you look at the clock and your day is over. So, and people who meditate talk all the time about how time shifts for them when they're in a deep meditation. So we do have the capability, I think, consciously to alter time, but not drastically. I mean, I can't throw myself 20 years into the future physically. I can imagine it, but I can't do that physically. We're limited.
I have a time warp in my house.
Do you really?
Where I do. I mean, not when I'm by myself, but when my husband and I are together. I swear to God, Marie, we are only talking for 10 minutes. Just 10 little teeny minutes. Until we look at the clock and realize an hour and a half has gone by. I don't know how we do it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people experience the time slips or time shifts where, there may be certain, I don't know if it has anything to do with like electromagnetic anomalies in certain locations or something environmentally, but there are a lot of reports of that happening to people where they are just walking along or driving along and they sort of enter what looks like a normal fog, and then 2 minutes later, they're 5 hours up the road and 500 miles away from where they were supposed to be, and just these weird sort of alterations of time. And I don't know, maybe there's one in your house. You got to wonder. I mean, the Earth is full of places where things don't quite vibrate all the same, so it's entirely possible. Have you ever had missing
my excuse,
time?
and I'm using it.
Yeah, there you go. Have you ever had missing time? Have you ever experienced
Thank God, no. Thank God, no.
I have. Yeah, I haven't. And Larry and I have. We both wrote about it in other books. And I had in Los Angeles, I had a couple of hours of missing time when I was driving on the freeway. And just gone. I mean, I ended up going north towards Sacramento when I was supposed to be going dead east, and I just lost a couple of hours of time, yet I maintained my ability to drive on Los Angeles freeways, which is phenomenal. But I was told later that the freeway area that I had that happen on was notorious for alien abductions. So,
see, and that would be my first thought.
It was, but... And it wasn't. For the longest time, I kept thinking, I just don't feel like anything happened. I mean, it was just, I sort of blacked out. I wasn't drunk. I mean, I just sort of lost that time. And when I came to, I was still driving. I was still functioning. And then I went into a panic when I realized where I was going. But, yeah, time, people have had so many strange experiences associated with time.
I mean, I've had situations driving to yet another conference, where it was a pretty long drive, and I just kind of put out the intention of, I just really want to get there in 10 hours versus, the 12 or 14 that it was supposed to take, and, and I would just be tooling along, and then the next thing I would know, I was like 400 miles down the road, but only, 3 hours had passed by, and I'm like, dang, either I was driving like 120 or something happened.
And I think that's one of the reasons why when you go somewhere that you've never been, the trip there always takes longer than the trip back, even though you're going along the exact same route. It's just your perception, what's going on with your mind. I know driving out to Vegas from here, it's like a 5.5-hour drive, 6 hours if there's traffic or more. It just... you keep saying to yourself, oh, I can't wait to get there. And then before you know it, you're there. And it's like, wait a second, where did all those hours go? So it really shows how the brain can distort time, can alter it, can sort of manipulate it. But the funny thing is, though, is that those hours are still there. People always say, oh, I never have enough time. It's like, well, everybody has the same amount of time. It's what you do with it. It's how you perceive it. It's how well you can stretch out the good parts of the time you have. So it's really just amazing how we think we have no control over time, which I think is why time travel is so popular, because we want control over it. But we probably have more control than we think.
I have a question about your little driving experience. When you realized where you were, had you put on 2 hours worth of distance, so 120 miles?
Oh, yeah. I was panicked. Here's what happened. I was a member of the Planetary Society, and I was going to see Carl Sagan. He was doing a big conference at the Jet Propulsion Lab where Planetary Society had their conference. This was a long time ago. And I was so excited. Oh, my God, he's one of my heroes. I was so excited, so excited. When I was trying to leave my apartment, I couldn't get the door to open. The doorknob just kept pulling closed. And my husband at the time, I was like, I can't get the door open. I can't get the door open. And he said, well, maybe you're not supposed to go. Maybe something bad is going to happen. And I thought, oh, you're full of crap. I'm not missing this for anything. I couldn't get out the door for the longest time. So finally, got in the car. I was on the 134 freeway in Glendale, anybody who knows Los Angeles Valley area. And just, next thing I knew, I think I was on the 2 heading north to Sacramento. And I was about 2 hours gone. I had missed the conference. I couldn't go. This was when cell phones were those gigantic things that you could kill somebody with. I frantically got off the freeway, called my husband. I don't know where I am. And he said, just get back on the freeway, go in the other direction until you hit a freeway you recognize. And it took me a while to get home, and I was in a total panic. And all I could think about later was, not so much did I get abducted, but why didn't I listen when the damn doorknob wouldn't open? It's almost like I knew I was going to have this weird thing. But then it was later I started thinking, can I remember any of that event? And I don't. I literally remember nothing during the time that I was zoned out, what have you. And I don't really want to.
I don't know, Marie. I'm thinking you were abducted.
I know. Wouldn't that be funny? That would be so funny. I'm kind of thinking, you know what? I'm fine. I don't need to go dig up that word. Oh, my gosh. But I know so many people.
But it could be a whole book.
I know. Hey, that might be my biggest bestseller. Oh, wow.
That's
now
right.
I'm thinking, I'll find out that I've given birth to a hybrid child somewhere.
Yeah.
But it really is. I mean, time is, I think we're just so freaked out because time, we're so aware of mortality and the arrow of time, and getting to that end point. So it really makes us fascinated with the idea, well, can we go back to the past? Can we relive it? Can I get 20 years back? I don't think it's that simple.
No. And I want to move on because, we're going to talk about time travel, which I have a lot of questions about. But what about the concept? It seems like a lot of people in the last, and I'm going to say 2 or 3 years, feel like time has been speeding up, on the whole planet. It's not our day-to-day, it's not like I feel like it's speeding up. It's kind of like this phenomena where we have all of this stuff to do, but not enough time. Have you found out anything about what might be causing that?
I think that it's exactly what we were talking about, where you and I were just talking about it more on an individual time sense. I think collectively, and from the things that I've read and that I've learned, we still have the same amount of hours in a day. But what's happening is there's more and more information coming at the brain. And this comes from technology and social networking and all of our gadgets and constantly being hooked into cell phones and iPads and whatnot. There's so much information that we didn't have 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, even 30. The brain now has to try to process and filter more stuff. And so it gives the impression that there's like this franticness, this sort of breathlessness for the brain to decide what's important to me and what's not. And I thought that was a really interesting theory because it does kind of speak to the fact that as time goes on, pun intended, and technology increases, we have so much stuff now to distract us and just we never really seem to have a quiet moment to ourselves. Whereas 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, people spent more time in the present moment, instead of on their cell phones or texting or worrying about the past or stressing out over the future. Life was lived a lot more by the moment, and there weren't all those distractions. That's the best theory and I know a lot of people say that it has to do with, the paradigm shift, but I think that's part of the paradigm shift. I think time is speeding up collectively, and we have to realize that if we don't stop that, we're all going to be left feeling like we've been hit by a bus, and everybody needs to start now choosing what is important, prioritizing, what they can filter out as not being necessary so that they can slow down and really enjoy their lives instead of having them feel so rushed through.
I just keep having images of, the Jetsons where I have my 2-hour workday and get to just lounge around and not do anything the rest of the time. And it just doesn't seem to happen.
I know. It's like you make these wonderful plans for this is what I'm going to do, and it doesn't happen. What is that John Lennon quote? Life is what happens when you're busy making plans or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But, yeah, I really think that collectively it's like we're all the lemmings and we're headed towards the cliff. And that cliff is just information and distractions. So now what's happening, I think, is a lot of people are realizing that they need to decide what's important, not just to them individually, but to the collective as well.
Good point.
That's my theory. I'm sticking to it.
Well, but I like it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's kind of real. All right, it is, it's something that our minds can wrap around, as opposed
right.
to some psychobabble woo stuff, which I don't have issues with, but it's kind of like, okay, so what does that mean to me today?
But I think there is a real sort of spiritual or metaphysical element to that, in that if physically we're being bombarded with more choices and distractions and more information, it really presses upon us to be more authentic about what we really want to experience in this busy, crazy life that is passing by very quickly. And I kind of get the feeling that that's part of what's going on now, is that people are collectively feeling like society has to change too. We need to stop plunging towards that cliff. We need to find out what's important, what our priorities are, and refocus back on that. So I do think that there is a very personal, spiritual element to the fact that, yeah, maybe scientifically we are being bombarded with more information that our brains have to figure out, do I need A, do I need B, do I need all of this stuff, or do I not need any of it? And you end up just feeling frantic and breathless, and you can't sleep at night.
Oh, I sleep too.
Sure. I know that feeling. It's like your brain never shuts off because it's too busy trying to figure out, well, what of this can I throw away? Do I need all this? Ugh.
Well, and then I think about, when you're a kid, summer vacation lasted for forever. June and July lasted forever. And so there has been part of me that goes, well, when my parents were my age now, or my grandparents were my age now, were they experiencing time in the same frantic kind of way? Is there a relationship with age and experience, or are young people experiencing time in a much faster way than we experienced it when we were young?
Here's part of that same theory that I had read, is that exactly what you said, that, the past generations had less distractions. They had less information for their brains to process. So life seemed a lot more, it may not have been easy. It may have been challenging and difficult. I mean, we're talking world wars and the Depression, but at the same time, their perception of time was not as frantic as ours. And children, the reason why those summer vacations take forever is because they're living in the moment. I mean, they're experiencing every moment that there is, and they're living it fully and richly. When they become adults, guess what? Responsibilities, distractions, more information to process, jobs, family, taking care of elderly parents, what have you, getting a car and paying the bills. So all of a sudden there's more crap for them to deal with. I mean, because I remember being a kid and feeling like those summers, I could not even perceive that school was going to start again until like the day before, because I was so in the moment of enjoying that summer vacation. So I really think that we are distracting ourselves to death.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need all of this information. We really have to sort of become more choosy about what we expose our little brains to. But today's young people,
my poor little brain just is feeling full now that we're talking about it.
Yeah, but it's funny because like my son, he's 11, and they're exposed to so much more information than we ever were. I mean, technology is their domain. And so time for this young generation may actually feel different than it did for the young generations of the past, because they got so much more stuff to be distracted by. I mean, kids rarely get outside now and just hang out in nature and experience what it's like to be in a natural setting. So it's definitely changing.
Definitely changing.
Yeah.
But then the other part of this book, let's kind of shift gears a little bit, is about time travel. But Marie, time travel, isn't that something like right out of science fiction?
Yeah, all the good stuff is out of science fiction. I mean, that's what I love about, I would say the science fiction of yesterday becomes the science fact of tomorrow. And it's just so cool to see how, in these early science fiction novels and short stories and even TV shows and more recent movies where you get these ideas and these theories that science starts playing around with, if they're not playing around with them already, and then before you know it, you've got something similar that, is coming out of the scientific community. The problem with time travel is that there are such limitations that we go up against. It's still so theoretical. We would have to figure out a way to overcome the limitations of the speed of light. We would have to figure out how we could overcome some of the paradoxes that are associated with time travel, like the grandfather paradox, where if you were to go back to the past and kill your grandfather because you hated his guts, then you wouldn't exist. And so it's all theoretical now, but on the particulate level, down at the quantum level, there have actually been experiments where a photon has been put into the future by a nano of a nanosecond. And we seem to be able to do things at the quantum level before they're ever extrapolated to the more cosmic or even the human scale. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that in our lifetimes we're going to see time travel, but it will be with particles. And I don't think we're going to get close enough to send a bunny or a monkey or, a human being through a wormhole to another point in time. I don't think that physically we are anywhere near that. That's, just from the research that we did and that I've read about and just where we're at right now. I could be wrong.
And we'll come back to that in a minute. From a theoretical point of view, okay, so from the quantum physicist, big numbers on the blackboard point of view, is it possible that we can move through time? There's the technology part, obviously. How do we make that happen?
Right, and that's where we fail miserably. Here's what's possible. So every time, if we can find something that can move beyond the speed of light, and we've come really close in the past. Just recently, last year, there were experiments that were done with neutrinos, which are particles that don't have mass, and everybody was in an uproar, so excited because it looked like they had breached light speed, and then a couple months later we find out that there were some technical glitches with the experiments, and no, they didn't. They came close. I think it's only a matter of time before we find something out there that can move faster than light. Einstein himself firmly believed that his laws and his theories and ideas and even the facts that rose from them would one day be overturned. The more knowledge that we had, the more capable we were of creating technology to learn more about our universe. But here's the thing, at the quantum level, there really is nothing. There's no time. Past, present, and future exist all at once. Everything is in a state of superposition. There's really nothing real until it's brought into reality through the act of measurement or observation. And we also know that if some of these really cool, awesome theories that super cool physicists are talking about, just like science fiction authors, like parallel universes and the multiverse, if we ever find evidence of these things, we might be able to get around some of those paradoxes and some of those issues that limit us now. Because you could go back in one timeline and kill your grandfather and not exist, but maybe in the next timeline you did. You jumped over real quickly, you got born or whatever. But it's just, it's something that we all really want to conquer. And yet one of the things that Larry and I really did is ask, well, are we sure? Are we really, really ethically and morally prepared to control time? Do we really want to go back to the past knowing how easily it might be to destroy the present and the future if people make too many changes and, all these paradoxes get twisted with? Would you really want to see your future if you found out that you were going to get hit by a bus next week and die? And I don't know, there's like this whole other aspect to this desire we have to overcome time that I think a lot of people don't think about.
But if we went, it just seems to me it would be kind of a domino effect or like the butterfly effect.
Exactly.
Where I change this one little thing over here, and then this interaction changes, and then that person's interaction changes, and it just spreads and spreads and spreads. And so it might be the thousands interaction over, or 5 years down the road where something that was very good and positive ends up not happening, kind of thing.
Yeah, and exactly. And we use two examples in the book. One is Stephen King's novel, 11/22/63, that he wrote about a guy who was asked to go back in time and stop the JFK assassination. And the other one was a Family Guy episode, believe it or not, where the dog and the baby go back in time to try to stop the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And both talk about the same thing in very different ways, about how there's this possibility that if you go back to the past, even to try to do something that you think is really good, like, say, kill Hitler before he can wipe out the 6 million Jews and all of the gypsies and et cetera, et cetera. Now, you go back and you stop that, but what these two examples showed is, what if, in doing that, you created even more death, more disaster? What if you came back after doing that and found out that by stopping Hitler, it created 25 copycat Hitlers who then went out and killed 500 million people? It's this idea that you have no idea what your change, like you said, that chain of cause and effect, where it would all of a sudden turn for the worse, even though what you thought you were doing was something positive.
Well, and you couldn't even run like mathematical formulas or simulations to get a true answer. Because, unless our lives are fixed, and there is no, free will, that's the word I'm looking for, two words I'm looking for. If there's no free will, then there's not really a way to say, okay, well, if we change this thing here, it's not a math equation.
Exactly.
It's more like dealing with that whole chaos theory.
And the thing is, like you said about the butterfly effect, you could go back and change the tiniest little thing, like, I just want to go back and say yes to that guy that I wanted to date in high school that I stupidly said no to, or I want to go back and I want to catch that ball that I dropped in Little League and everybody made fun of me and I felt like an idiot. And you thinking this is something personal, simple, who's it going to affect? Until you actually go back and do it and you realize how much of a ripple effect there is. Like the little flapping of the wings of the butterfly, one butterfly, the ripple effect will cause a hurricane, 500 miles away or 1,000 miles away. So people think, well, I would love to go back to my past and I would like to do something differently, not realizing that it's not just going to affect one thing. It's going to affect everything, everybody they knew then, everybody they were associated with, everybody that they've known up to this point in time. It's all going to change. And are you willing, really, to do that and to alter other people's lives as well? So the moral and ethical issues of time travel to me are really huge. And maybe, Larry and I were talking about this the other day, maybe there is something built into the cosmic structure that, and Stephen Hawking talked about this, that really protects us. It's like a protection mechanism that keeps us from doing this because we would really screw it up.
And we're pretty stupid in general. If we had that technology today, we're pretty stupid. And it would be the government doing stuff, and it's just like, ooh, scary.
I know. And think about this, too. Think about somebody wanting to go back and change their past, and it would affect you, and they don't have your permission. So you'd have to have all these waivers and lawyers and all kinds of forms to be filled out. You give so-and-so permission to go back, and, and it really does show how we are all, and I don't mean to get real metaphysical here, but we're all connected. There is this web of connectivity where you can't just assume that you're going to be able to do something and the only person it's going to affect is you, because it's not.
I thought it was all about me, Marie.
I know, really. Darn it, I thought I was the center of the universe. I'm the center of my universe, aren't I?
That's right.
But, you have to wonder, is this one of the reasons why we have these physical limitations, like not being able to, disobey the laws of the universe, including light speed and these paradoxes? If we can't break through them, maybe there's a reason. It's a built-in protection mechanism to keep us from screwing everything up.
But haven't there been experiments like, wasn't the Philadelphia experiment an experiment in time travel, or like the Montauk, is that correct, experiment where they supposedly were flying people through time?
Right, it was a DARPA-run alleged experiment. And the thing with these is, nobody's ever really proven they were really real, or that they were what they say they were. We have a lot of witness reports. We don't have a lot of proof. The Philadelphia experiment, what it looked like it may have been, and there's still so much controversy over whether or not it really even happened, but it sounds like a cloaking attempt, attempt to use some kind of cloaking to render a ship invisible to radar or what have you, degaussing, something like that. And, there's so many different stories. It's become just such a myth and a legend that they actually did manage to render the ship invisible, but they also experienced a little bit of a time shift as well. What's interesting, though, is that all these years later, just a couple of years ago, researchers at Cornell University, and I believe a couple of other places as well, came out with experiments where they successfully cloaked 2- and 3-dimensional objects using the microwaves. So it's almost like the alleged conspiracies of the past were hinting at technology that we now are seeing as being real. And so you think about all the Tesla's experiments, and he claimed as well to have had a device, a machine that knocked him around in time, and maybe somebody did get a hold of it, and they started experimenting with it. It's really hard to prove those theories or conspiracies, I guess I should say, but at the same time it's hard to not unless you were actually there. So yeah, it's absolutely fascinating that there are people too that claim to have been chrononauts, which are time travelers, that the government took them as children and did experiments with them and achieved time travel. Now here's the problem I have with that. Even though I'm not going to say I don't believe these people, I want to know how that big of a secret had stayed so secret, and why the most brilliant physicists of our time are not aware of that technology when this is their field of study. I mean, Brian Greene, Michio Kaku, Fred Allen Wolfe, Lisa Randall, Stephen Hawking, on and on and on, Kip Thorne. Why are these people not aware of the same technological ability? That's where I sort of run into a wall. It's absolutely fascinating. I mean, you heard about the Charlie Chaplin picture, from the movie The Circus, where it looks like a woman is talking into a cell phone, and they couldn't possibly have that.
I saw that online a long time ago, but share it with the listeners, because just in case they haven't seen it or whatever.
It's the movie's called The Circus, Charlie Chaplin. Oh gosh, you could Google Charlie Chaplin time traveler, and then because Larry, he did a presentation a couple of times where he went and he found this company called Siemens. They were building hearing devices that looked very similar and were described as being very similar. So it's kind of like, okay, was it some big conspiracy, or was somebody just misinterpreting the photograph? And there's other stories of people appearing in the past that look like they were dressed in futuristic clothing, or they were holding devices or wearing modern-looking sunglasses or what have you. So, I mean, it's impossible to prove. It's impossible to disprove. But I tend to lean on the side of people misinterpreting things. That's just me, the skeptic in me.
Well, and I can't remember the gentleman's name at all, who claims to have come from the future. And John Titor, yeah. Google John Titor, people. What's his story, and what do you think think about him? Other than maybe he's a spook or an alien. Aliens explain a lot.
The thing is, nobody ever, he claimed to be from, I think, like the year 2036. I may be a little bit off on that. And he just sort of showed up online all of a sudden I'm looking in here, and he had a website, johntitor.com, in 2001, and started posting on the internet who he was, and that he was a time traveler from the future, that he was here to retrieve some kind of IBM computer system sort of a dinosaur computer system and bring it back to where he was from. And he claimed that he had this time travel mechanism in the back of a car, a Chevrolet convertible, all kinds of claims. And then he started making all these claims about sort of prophesizing about things that were going to happen in the future, disasters and wars and what have you, the vast majority of which never happened. And then he just sort of vanished. So it was this internet phenomenon. It was like this viral phenomenon. There were people who really started looking into the possibility that he might be this person, he might be that person. And to this day, nobody knows who he was. He talked to Art Bell on Coast to Coast, made some predictions, and the problem was nobody's ever seen him. And it was all via internet or on the phone. And so you could have a guy who really is telling the truth, or you could have a total nutjob who is putting everybody through the biggest joke of the century, but there wasn't enough proof to prove either way, to go either way. So, but that was one of the biggest time travel, quote-unquote, conspiracies that there has been. And, you know, the internet makes it so easy for people to do things like that. It goes viral, and then before you know it, everybody is buying into something that they didn't really possibly look at from the origin point, or they might have said, that seems a little suspicious to me. So, interesting.
Well, you know, if it's on the internet, it has to be true.
Exactly. Just like I remember in Beverly Hillbillies when Jethro said, if it's in this here comic book, it's got to be true. Now we have the internet, so.
This good friend of mine, Bryant Forrester, who's been on the show several times, does a lot of work with the elongated heads in South America. And so he had posted an image of this baby. I mean, it looked like an infant with an elongated head. Well, the next thing you know, the image is being posted, alien baby found with elongated head.
Yeah, it was.
And I'm like, how did it become alien?
Yeah. It is. It's really freaky. And it's like those celebrities that everybody claims are dead, but they're still alive. It's like, wait a second. When did that person die? And yet you have, probably because TMZ or some show mistakenly reported someone as dead and then retracted their story, but things go viral. I mean, there are pictures that go viral that people are saying, oh, look at this is true. Now, I'm not big on Photoshop. I don't really know how to do that kind of stuff, but I'm smart enough to see the seams and where things were edited, and it's just amazing. I think we have a real love of conspiracy. I think we have a real love of wanting there to be stuff going on that we don't know about, mystery, secrets, what's going on. But sometimes people will post, like you said, they post a picture and somebody says it's this when no, and then you can't convince them otherwise, right? It's like no matter what you do, you can't convince them that that's not an alien head. No.
So have there been any good conspiracies surrounding time and time travel?
There were, again, like we just talked about, the Montauk chair, the DARPA experiments, John Teeter, these pictures that every now and then pop up of people who claim to be fish out of time, like fish out of water. And every now and then somebody will come along and claim that they're from the past or the future, and they've got these wonderful stories, but again, they have no proof. So we're stuck with, sort of their argument against our belief, where there's really no proof. They may have a lot of statistics and facts and names and dates that they throw out, and it sounds really authentic and possible, but again, without any kind of proof, it's hard for the more skeptical among us and even the scientific community to say, yeah, okay, there might be something to that. And that's why I said, if somebody like Michio Kaku or Brian Greene or these amazing physicists that are working on time travel and trying to dissect what would have to happen on a physics level, if they're not aware of this technology, I'm sorry, but I'm having a hard time believing that anybody else is. People say, well, the military, the government. Well, yeah, like they know what they're doing. And wouldn't they hire physicists of equal intelligence So I just don't buy it. I don't know. That's just me. But I love a good conspiracy. I really do. And I would love to find out that there's a chair you could sit in and travel back in time.
Well, see, if they're going to put all this time and energy developing technology at that level, I want a transporter. I don't care about time travel.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to get to work without
Freeway
getting
travel.
in my car.
Freeway travel, exactly. Because, see, I don't really want to mess with time because of all those creepy things that we were talking about before. But, yeah, I want to rise above the traffic. Like, what is it, the Jetsons? And then you just sort of hover over and zoom off, and that's what I want.
I don't even want that. I just want, like, a little circle platform, and I hear,
and you're there.
And I de-energize, and then I re-energize somewhere else. Much better.
Yeah, and I want food to be able to energize in my home the second that I want it from the grocery store or the
yeah.
See, I mean, really, time travel is so fascinating, but it has to serve a function. And
yeah, and I really can't see any good point to it.
But
really.
we still want to do it. I mean, come on. If we found out tomorrow somebody had achieved it and there was a craft that could do it, we'd be thrilled.
Well, if I could go back and bet on a football game or a baseball game and make millions of dollars, put money into the stock market, but then, there's the ripple effect, and it's like...
There is, yeah, because you never know what negatives might be associated with all the positives that you're looking at. Like, I always say the same thing. I'd love to go back and relive my son's first 5 years, and just cuddle him and snuggle him again, and then I'm thinking, okay, what would that change, though? What would be worse? So I don't know. I mean, I think maybe we should just be happy with the time we have and make the best of it. That might be the big message behind all of these paradoxes and our inability to time travel at this point. It's like, people, enjoy the time you have first, then we'll talk about traveling through time.
But that's because they keep running out of time because they're so distracted with everything else going on in their life. They want to, rerun it to see what they missed.
Exactly. We need projectors. See, we need time travel projectors that we can just view and observe and okay, I'll never do that again. Can't really change anything. You don't want the butterfly effect, but you can at least learn from re-observing your past.
But don't they say, there are people that say that things like astral projection or remote viewing is actually a form of time travel. How do you feel about that concept? I totally agree, and that was the most fun stuff to focus on because, scientifically, they're not going to say. This is what's funny, though. We found out that there were some research projects going on into what's called chronesthesia, which is mental time travel. And they use that term because basically what these people are doing is looking at the brain's ability to travel through time via memory and perception and what have you. And so then you start to move into the area that you and I are real familiar with, more paranormal, metaphysical, and you start to realize that when you have experiences like even could be seeing a ghost from a past time or alien, somebody seeing an entity, deja vu, precognitive dreams, visions, remote viewing, psychic abilities, where you predict something that might happen to somebody. All of that stuff is a form of mental time travel. People who meditate, yogis who talk about how they can slow time down. I think on a consciousness and mental level, we are doing it already. But, of course, we're humans and we want to do everything physically because that to us is more important, quote, unquote. But you're right. All of those things are ways that we are mentally traveling through time. Marie, I'm looking at the clock. We have 1 minute left. So let's slow down time so it can be like another hour.
Yes. See, didn't that go by fast, huh?
It did. If people want to get a copy of this book is from the future. Do they have to wait till tomorrow to get it?
No, it's been out for years. No, it's in bookstores now. It's available online now. Don't wait for the future. Don't worry about the past. Go buy it now.
And I would think that if they go to Amazon to go purchase a copy and they click on your name, they can access all the other million books, excellent million books that you've written.
Yes, the plethora of books. And my website, mariedjones.com. My website with Larry is paraexplorers.com. I know Barnes & Noble is running a big in-store promotion with the book, so they might have it on sale. So, don't waste time.
Don't waste time. Marie, it is always so much fun to have you on the show. I just love you to death.
You
just
too,
think,
absolutely.
Paradigm Symposium, not that far away.
Yep, just a few months. I'll give you a big hug.
Okay. Marie, there's the music, which means we have to go. Until next time, you stay cool, girl.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, bye. That's Marie Jones. Her webpage is mariedjones.com. This book is from the future, and we will be back with Cynthia Sue Larson after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.